Welcome students. In this video, we are going to go deep inside to understand the response of organisms to various abiotic factors. Now, we know that organism lives in a particular habitat or niche. Now, what happens is the abiotic conditions of a habitat are never constant and they keep changing along with the time. Now, these changes in the abiotic conditions, so the changes which are observed in abiotic conditions are also likely to affect the organism. Now, a big question is that how these organisms are capable or how these organisms cope up with the ever changing abiotic conditions, because we know many physiological activities are directly or indirectly affected. Temperature is a very good example where the rise of temperature causes or affects the enzymatic activity. Similarly, the pH of the medium, aquatic medium, if it changes, the aquatic animals will get affected. So how these animals or plants are able to cope up with the ever changing abiotic factors. Now, to sustain or to continue the life, many species go through a process which is known as homeostasis. So, homeostasis is a phenomena that helps in maintaining the organism's internal environment. That means if there is any change in the surroundings, the organism is still able to maintain its body functions. So many species have evolved a relatively constant internal environment, and that allows all physiological reactions and the biochemical reactions to run with maximum efficiency. So homeostasis is a condition in which what have we seen, that the internal environment is maintained. Internal environment is maintained by the organism, and as a result of it, the biochemical reactions which are taking place within the body, biochemical reactions and the physiological activities continue, or they go with maximum efficiency, and thereby allowing the organism to be fit for survival. So the overall homeostasis will not allow the or will not cause any change in the organism's functioning of biochemical reaction and physiological activities, and as a result the organism will be able to survive in various or different types of abiotic conditions. So when we say or when we want to define the homeostasis, it is the physiological process by which the organism regulates its internal environment in response to fluctuating external environment. So homeostasis is one of the important phenomena by which an organism manages itself to survive in the changing abiotic conditions. Now there are different ways by which an organism can survive. Now the various ways is, first is they can regulate, or the important thing is they can confirm. These are the ways. They can migrate, they can suspend. So these are the various ways by which an organism can manage to survive under various kinds of changes which are in the abiotic factors. Now, when we see or when we study, we'll be studying about each of the factor in detail and how does it affects or how does the organism manages itself to survive in the various or ever changing abiotic condition. Let us talk about the first type, that is these are the types of organisms, or we call it the type of response. When we say type of response, first is regulate. Now, regulate, obviously, the name itself suggests these are also known as the organisms, regulators, endotherms, or another term has been given which is homeotherms or homotherms, we call it. It is homeotherms. Now, regulators are those organisms, these are the types of organism, depending the ones who are ones who show this regulate type of response will be known as regulators. The organisms which show this type of response, that is regulate type of response, are known as regulators or endotherms or homeotherms. Now, these organisms are those that maintain a steady internal environment. It can be brought about by physiological or behavioral means. So, regulate is they are actually they maintain stable internal environment. They maintain stable internal environment. It can be brought about by the help of physiological or any environmental means and remain unaffected, remain unaffected by the changing surroundings. So these animals when we see, or organisms when we see, these organisms do not, or there is no effect of environment which changes around this or which is changing in their surroundings, and they are capable of maintaining stable internal environment. This means that they are ensuring constant body temperature. That is, they are having two types of methods. One is by maintaining, this can be achieved, the stable internal environment can be maintained by maintaining stable body temperature. Now here we have human beings as good example. We whether we go to our colder polar regions or whether we go to desert, our body temperature remains constant. So there is no change in the internal environment and all our physiological activities tend to take place normally. Now, therefore, they are known as thermoregulators also because they are maintaining the temperature. Thermoregulators or homeotherms. Now, or endotherms as well. Now, example is birds and mammals. Now, also there are certain animals that maintain a constant osmolarity of body fluid. So, the first method is by maintaining the stable body temperature or by maintaining stable osmolarity of body. So, maintaining stable osmolarity of body. These is normally found in the aquatic animals. So, most lower vertebrates and invertebrates undergo for this maintaining the stable osmolarity of the body. And whereas most of the organism, what the internal body temperature is maintained, and as a result of which they remain unaffected with the changing environment. Now here in this diagram you can see it very clearly how the regulators are behaving. This is the internal level. That means if there is any change in the internal level, adjustment. And this is the external level. This is the change which is brought about in the abiotic factor, external level. Now you can see in the red, the regulators remain unaffected. There is no change. The body temperature and the osmolarity of the body fluids is maintained, and we see the regulators as a straight line. That means with the change in the abiotic factors, there is no effect on the regulators. Now, when we talk of the regulators, the evolutionary biologists, those who are studying the evolution, they have come to the conclusion that mammals are able, because mammals are regulators, and this has given them a definite advantage to survive in harsh climates, because the internal body temperature remains same. Therefore they can survive extreme climates right from Antarctica, which is having sub-zero temperatures, to desert region which is very hot. And the main reason is they are capable of maintaining the constant body temperature. Human beings are definitely a very good example for it, because we maintain a constant body temperature irrespective of the changing surrounding. Now, how does our body function if we try and understand it? During the summer months, when the temperature goes high, the body starts sweating. And due to the sweat and its evaporation, the cooling takes place. And when the winters are there, the body starts shivering. So this shivering is a form of physical exercise, and as a result the blood flow increases and the heat is generated within the body. So these are the mechanisms by which we are able to survive in all kinds of climates. Now, this mechanism of regulation is not found in the plants. So regulators are only animals, and this regulate phenomena is not found in the case of plants. Now, when we are talking of regulators, there are certain other terms which we'll be talking about, the partial regulators, in the next part. Now, there are other types. When we are looking over here, the type of response, the other type of response is confirmed. And all the organisms that follow this type of response are known as confirmers. So here the mechanism is confirmed, and the organisms that are following this are known as confirmers. Now, confirmers are actually when we see around ourselves, most of the plants and animals, approximately 99% of the living organism belong to this category. And these are those organisms which do not maintain internal stable environment. So these organisms do not maintain stable internal environment. Now, what is the outcome of it? When they are not maintaining the stable internal environment, they adjust according to the changes in their surrounding. So over here the regulators remain unaffected, but here they adjust according to environment, to changing environment. Now, their body temperature and the osmotic concentration of body fluids will obviously change. Here in the regulators we have seen they are maintaining stable body temperature and stable osmolarity of the body. But since they do not maintain, the conformers do not maintain the stable internal environment, they adjust according to the changing environment. So they need to change their body temperature as well as the osmotic concentration. Now, therefore, we also call these animals or the organisms as poikilothermic or ectotherms. So, the conformers are also known as poikilotherms or ectoderms. Why we are calling ectoderms? Because here the external environment affects the organism. Endotherms because the internal environment remains stable. Now these conformers actually are not they have to change their body temperature and the osmotic concentration according to the surroundings. Now a big question is that why these conformers have not evolved as regulators. Now it is because when we talk of regulators, they maintain the stable internal environment by maintaining the body temperature or by having the constant or maintaining the osmotic concentration. Now, the process of thermoregulation, that is maintaining the body temperature, requires lot of energy, and especially for small animals it will be quite expensive, as heat loss or heat gain is directly related to the surface area of the body. So if larger the surface area of the body, the heat loss will be more or the heat gain will be more. Now since the small animals we see have a large body surface to volume ratio, obviously they lose heat very fast, and if it is cold outside, and have to spend a lot of energy to generate body heat as regulators do, so by shivering and all. So therefore small animals are absent in the polar regions, the main reason, because if they are present in the polar region, the small size of the organism will have large surface area, and since the temperature is very low, to maintain that body heat they will require a lot of energy, which is not feasible. So therefore we do not find small animals in the polar region, although some species have evolved the ability to a certain extent to change from conformers to regulators. But it is only up to a limited range of environmental conditions, beyond which they follow the normal role of conformers. Now the lizards, insects and fish are the best example of conformers, because lizards they also are cold-blooded or poikilothermic, so they need to they cannot face the winters. And we find similarly fishes also, they have to they maintain the body with the help of maintaining the osmotic concentration. So we find over here there are many animals which follow, animals and plants which follow the confirmed pattern or the type of response. Now over here in the diagram you can see, as the external environment is changing, there is a change in the internal environment as well for the conformers. So the regulators are maintaining the stable environment, whereas the conformers are changing their internal environment along as according to the external environment. Then here we have another one, that is partial regulators. Now partial regulators, when we talk, these are organisms that have evolved the ability to regulate, but up to only a certain level of environmental condition. Beyond that, they go for confirmation. So they are partial regulators. As you can see over here, they are partial regulators. Starting is conformation, then there are they follow the pattern of regulators. Now, they these regulators are few, partial regulators are few in numbers. Then we have the third type, that is the migrators. Now, the migrators, or the type of response when we talk, it is the migration. The third type of response when we talk is of migration. And those animals which undergo or which follow the response are known as migrators. Migration is a very common phenomena among the animals. It is found only in the animals. In this, the organism move away from the temporary harsh condition. So, if an organism is facing harsh or unfavorable condition, unfavorable or harsh condition in the environment or in the habitat, then it will migrate or move to favorable condition. It will migrate or move to the favorable condition. Now, on the oncoming of the favorable condition, it will return back. So, it's a two-way phenomena in which the organism will migrate during the unfavorable conditions to the favorable condition, and on the return of the favorable condition over here, the organism will return back to its original place. Now, example is Siberian cranes. Siberian cranes are very good example of this. Siberian cranes actually, they migrate to India in winters, and because Siberia faces a lot of, the winters are very harsh over there. So the Siberian cranes move from Siberia to India during the winter timings, when the winters is over there. And when the summers are there in the Siberia, then it will move from India back to Siberia. Then another is the African wild beasts. Now, this moves according to the availability of vegetation or food. So, over here we see that migration can be due to many reasons. It can be for the food, it can be for the climate, that means the temperature and all, or many other reason. So, over here we see Siberian crane is moving because or migrating because of the temperature change. African wild beast is an example where the animal is migrating, seeing to the availability of the vegetation where the food is readily available. Then it is the third example is salmon fish. Now this salmon fish migrates to the fresh waters for spawning, that is the laying of eggs. So we see different kinds depending upon the requirement of the organism. It will migrate and will come back to its original place of habitat on the return of the favorable condition. Then the fourth type which we find is the suspend. Now, suspend is actually the type of response in which the organism reduces the body function. So, all suspends. So, the organism over here suspends body functions and temporarily. It is very important that this happens temporarily. Now, they can reduce it, they can reduce or they can achieve this by reducing the body functions, and decreasing their energy requirement. So the two ways is by suspending body function temporarily, and also second is by reducing energy requirement. So this will enable the organism to save lot of energy for surviving in the harsh or unfavorable condition. They remain in a state of dormancy or inactivity and during these conditions. For example, the bacteria, fungi and many lower plants, they produce spores, and these spores have thick walls which enable the organism or the plants or the animals to survive during the unfavorable conditions. And when the favorable conditions come, these organisms or these spores will germinate and will develop into a new individual. Now, when we see the type of suspending activities, the three type of activities are seen. Suspend can be of three types. That is, we have first the type of suspend activities, that is hibernation. It will be of three types. Hibernation. The second is the estivation. And the last is diapause. Now, hibernation is the process actually of remaining dormant, that means inactive, during extreme cold conditions. So, hibernation is followed during cold conditions when the organism will suspend all its activities. And it is very common in conformers or the poikilotherms, because this will help the organisms to save the energy. Now, few mammals also show this. For example, the frogs, the bears, etc. Now, the true, which are actually the organisms, there are certain hibernators which have winter sleep. And during this winter sleep, there is a reduction in their body temperature, the respiratory rhythm and the heartbeat rate. And overall, these phenomena, whatever these are taking place, this reduces the activity, metabolic activities which are going under the inside the organism, and will save lot of energy. And on the return of the summers, these organisms function normally. The estivation, on the other hand, over here is a process uh, of remaining dormant, that is again inactive, during extreme hot conditions. So the hibernation is followed during the cold conditions, estivation is followed during very hot conditions, that is summers. And many snails and fishes undergo this type of suspend activities to avoid the hot summer, because during hot summer a lot of water from the body is lost in the form of sweat and evaporates. So as a result, to prevent the body from losing a lot of water, estivation is one of the phenomena. The diapause is the third type of activity of suspend, and it is the a state of suspended development, and it is shown in some of the animal species, obviously under the unfavorable conditions. So the development will be stopped. Example is zooplankton species. Many zooplanktons undergo this process, in which they will suspend the development, and as a result the organism does not waste its energy, but on the return of the favorable condition, the organism will develop as and will perform lot of activities. So over here we find that the organism respond to various types, the response of the organism is of various types, and depending upon the type of response we have classified the organisms as regulators, conformers, partial regulators, migrators and suspend. Overall, if we see in a nutshell, the regulators maintain the stable environment and they remain unaffected by the changes in the external environment. Definitely this is an advantage, and that's why mammals are very successful, because they are homotherms. Then we have the conformers. Their internal environment is not stable, and they change their body temperature and the osmotic concentration along with the changing external environment. So the graph, as the external level also changes, the internal level will also change, and they are known as poikilotherms or ectotherms. Then we have partial regulators which follow the confirmed level up to a certain range, and then they will become the regulators. Then we have the migrators which move due to different reasons. It can be for breeding, it can be for food, or it can be to avoid the unfavorable harsh climatic conditions. And these organisms always return back to their original place of habitat on the return of the favorable conditions, and it is found in the animals only. Then we have the suspend type of activities, which is achieved by hibernation, estivation and diapause, in which the organism will suspend its physiological or metabolic activities, and by either reducing the heartbeat or the rhythmic, the respiratory rhythm and various type of activities to save energy, and on the return of the favorable conditions they will bounce back to their normal self. So we see over here, these methods have enabled the organisms to survive in various kinds of habitat and ever changing abiotic factors.